morning. So for those watching by video, this is filmed right after the other one. I just changed shirts for the appearance. Anyway, no, just kidding. It's been a couple days. So today we're going over lesson 3, wisdom and maturity. And what we're going to cover in the first lesson, these next 2 hours, are the big picture and the little picture. First of all, I want to recap some of the definitions that we talked about last week. You know, one of you asked me for a more clear, concise definition. So understanding is being able to see the cause and effect. Deep understanding is being able to see different layers and levels of cause and effect. Wisdom is wanting the right thing, and because wisdom and understanding go together, wisdom is wanting the right thing and knowing how to get it, understanding how to get it. Maturity comes from being committed to the right thing. Okay, so the thing is with maturity is that our eyes are opened as we understand. You know, we can't receive the seed sown into the soil of our hearts if we don't understand, but as we receive it, we have to reject everything else also. So our eyes are opened and we live accordingly. After we live accordingly, we start to have our eyes opened even more. And then other options start to become more clear to us, and then other options become faded away. Everything becomes more simple as our eyes open and are more clear. So all of this hinges on the right thing. You know, again, we need to want the right thing. We need to be committed to the right thing. So what is the right thing? So to see that, first we need to zoom back. You know, if you picture, I'm sure with your phone or with your camera or whatever it may be, you know, if you're zoomed in on something and you see like a face, and then you zoom back and then you see the whole person, then you zoom back even more and then you see their surroundings. And like in some movies they do this, where it zooms back and all of a sudden you see the city, you know, the skyscrapers, and you see the state, then you see the whole world, then you see the galaxy and the planet. You just zoom back farther and farther and farther. And so this lesson, I'm going to be zooming back little by little until we see the biggest picture of all. So first of all, if we start to zoom back, the first key is to be self-aware. That's a key part of wisdom and maturity. You know, awareness of our limited perspective. You know, a baby doesn't realize that they can only see through their own eyes. When a baby's hungry, they're like, I'm hungry. That's all that matters, I'm hungry, right? They can only see through their own perspective. But see, as you grow and mature, you start to be able to see beyond that. And sadly, not everybody, it's like I said in the first lesson, it's not automatic. Just because you get older doesn't mean you automatically can start to see from other people's perspectives. Part of being immature is not being able to see yourself from any other point of view. You know, you say, this is how things are for me, so this is how things are for everybody. You know, if a baby is like that, that's fine. Being immature is a stage. You know, sometimes we think that's an insult to say you're immature. And it's like, don't call me immature, that's a bad thing. So people resist it. But if you realize, no, it's just a status. It's just, you're not mature in this area. Right? So again, if we can look in the mirror and say, I might not be mature in this area, now that gives you opportunity to say, I want to become more mature in this area. Right? If we think it's an insult, we'll be like, no, of course not. And then when you minister to somebody else, you'll be afraid to minister to them. You're like, I don't want to be condescending. But you won't feel like you're being condescending if you realize, I'm not looking down on you. I'm helping a child grow. I'm helping a baby mature. When I teach my daughter something, I'm not saying, I'm so ashamed of you that you don't know how to cook and clean and do your own laundry, right? I don't look at her that way because I don't see that as a bad thing. I see this is a stage of growth that you're at, and so I'm going to help you through this stage of growth. It's not a bad thing unless you get stuck there. If you get stuck if my daughter never gets beyond 1.5 feet tall, something's wrong, right? It's not God's best. God doesn't want us to get stunted in our growth. You know, most people see themselves as the main character of the entire world's story. I don't know if you've ever thought this. I think a lot of people have, where you're sitting around and you're like, I wonder if everybody else is fake and I'm the only real one, right? Like, what if everybody else is a robot? How would I ever know? You know, what if I'm on the Truman Show or something where everybody's acting and I'm the only one actually alive? And I don't know has anybody ever thought that? Something along, okay, a few kindred spirits out there, okay. And so, but many people see themselves that way, not necessarily consciously, but subconsciously. It's kind of like, it's all about me, right? They just passed a new law. Does it affect me? No. Then who cares? right? And they just did this over here. They just did that over there. I don't care. It doesn't affect me. Or, I'm only sad for people if they die if I knew them. If I didn't know them, who cares? And we have this disconnection where it's kind of like it's about me, and it's only as important as much as it affects me. The only things that matter are things that affect me. I'm always right. When I'm not right, it's someone else's fault. No one else has thoughts or emotions as complex or as deep as mine. No one else has excuses as valid as mine, right? Because you can say sometimes like, how dare you do that? I can't believe you do that. And they say, I'm so sorry. I just made a mistake. And then when, you're like, I can't believe you. I'm so ashamed of you. I'll never trust you again. Then when you make that mistake, you're like, oh, why would you not accept my excuse? I had a valid reason, right? I'm apologizing. Why would you not accept my repentance? And so again, sometimes we see it differently when it's us instead of when it's somebody else. But it's incredibly limiting to live this way. It's like driving without mirrors. You have major blind spots and you're just not aware of it. And you're just kind of like, I don't care what I do. I'm going to change lanes right now. Bam, hit the 18-wheeler, right? And so it's very limiting to live like that. So let me give a few examples of my own life to kind of explain what I'm talking about. Most of my life, I always assumed Jesus would come back in my lifetime. And I just always was convinced of that. And I still have a strong suspicion that he's going to come back in my lifetime. And because of that, I was kind of like, so why plan ahead? Why plan for the long haul? Why plan for grandkids when I know that I'm never going to have grandkids because the world's going to end before then? So I started thinking, because the world's going to end sometime, I don't know when, but I think, in the next several decades, or, if I'm thinking like that, and I say because of that, I'm going to get in crazy debt, or I'm not going to think about the future. I'm not going to do anything that lasts. I'm not going to have any long-term plans. What happens if I'm wrong? Because see, it dawned on me one day, every single generation of Christians thought that their generation was the worst one. Every single generation of Christians, most people thought Jesus was coming back in their lifetime. And eventually some generation is going to be right, maybe us. But then it dawned on me, what if it's not me? What if the world lasts another 1,000 years? And so I still want to live as though Jesus could come back today. But I want to be prepared in case he's not. I want to invest in things. I want to sow things that will bear fruit for 1,000 years. I want to sow things that will bear fruit until Jesus does come back, even if it's not for 10 more generations, 100 more generations, right? I want to be prepared. Like, I don't want to raise my daughter and be like, you'll never actually be a grandparent because I'll be the last generation of grandparents, right? It's when you're single, you're like, Jesus, come back, but not till I get married, right? And then, once you have kids, you're like, Jesus, come back, but not until I get to see them grow up. And, you keep kind of doing that. But again, it's having that self-awareness saying, everyone else thought they were right. I think I'm right. They were wrong. What if I'm wrong? And see, that takes a level of maturity and wisdom to see yourself and say, look at my context. It's the same as theirs. Maybe I'm wrong because they're wrong. And so it's about looking at our context. It takes that humility to say, am I willing to look at myself objectively and not only look through my own two eyes? And it's not only about being right and wrong. When I was a kid, I remember saying to my mom once, so I was like 10 years old or something, and I said, I wish I could skip being a teenager because I don't want to be a jerk and I don't want to ever be mean to you, right? Because I'd seen in TV shows and in different situations in life, you see like, oh, teenagers seem to stop thinking straight. And so I saw this as a 10-year-old and I was like, it seems to happen to everybody or almost everybody. I'm about to become a teenager. Therefore, it might happen to me. I might stop thinking straight, and I don't want to stop thinking straight. I don't want to be mean to you because I love you, right? And so I had that self-awareness of this might happen to me. So then when I got into that situation, it protected me. See, understanding, having that awareness equips you. Because see, then when my parents would do something, I'd be like, you are so stupid. You are so unfair. In the back of my mind, before I said those things, I'd say, wait a minute. This is what other teenagers say, and they were wrong. I'm a teenager, maybe I'm wrong, right? They felt they were 100% right. I think I'm 100% right. But maybe something's clouding my judgment right now. And so having that self-awareness to back up and say, maybe I'm in a similar situation. Is this how I really feel? Is something going on? Are my hormones going crazy so I'm angry all the time? If you have that self-awareness, it equips you to make better decisions. I remember, as a kid, I used to read books about how to raise kids. I was always a very self-aware child. And so I was kind of like, oh, wow, this is what kids need to know. I'm a kid, so I need to know this. But for me, it's also kind of like, someday I'm going to be a parent. I want to know how to raise kids. I mean, I remember when I was like 9 or something, I remember saying to myself, I understand more than adults think I do. I don't want to forget that when I'm an adult. I don't want to ever talk down to kids because I understand more than they think I do. So I want to remember when I talk to kids when I'm a grown-up, they understand more than I give them credit for. Same when I was a teenager. I'm like, because you see lots of ministry that is very condescending. And I was like, I don't want to talk down to kids. I don't want to talk down to teenagers. I don't want to talk down to young people of any age. Or I don't want to talk down to old people too, now that I'm getting there. But I just realized I don't want to talk down because there is a level of depth. Even when people make jokes about like, oh, teenagers, all they care about is cell phones and clothing. And it's like, teenagers are very deep. They're discovering depth for the first time. When you're like 10, 12, 13, and as that goes on, you're discovering new things. And so they may talk about things that aren't interesting to you, and yet there's a depth there. And if you connect with that, it elevates them. Again, you can connect at a deeper level. And so, again, it's all about being self-aware. It's, okay, I'm in this situation. Other people who are in this situation have these thoughts and emotions, and they're 100% sure they're right. When that happens to me, will I be humble enough to say, what if I'm wrong? I could be at a friend's house, and his mom would walk in, this is like in high school. His mom would walk in with like some glasses and cookies and stuff and be like, do you guys want some snacks? And he'd be like, get out of my room, Mom, you're so annoying. And I'd be like, what on earth? Why are you such a jerk? Like, I want juice and snacks. Like, what's the matter with you? She's bringing us cookies. And so it dawned on me, I was like, it's very easy to see this in somebody else. It's incredibly easy to see this in somebody else. But it's much harder to see it in ourselves. So I started thinking, you're a real jerk to your mom. And so I started thinking, are there things that annoy me about my family that other people would look at me and say, why are you a jerk? Like I used to hate when my sister would watch TV with me. I don't know why, but I was like 15 and she was 12, and having your 12-year-old sister there while you're watching cartoons, it just annoyed me. Once one of her friends actually, so we're watching TV in this room, and I was like, I turned it off and started walking out. So they started walking out too, and I turned back around, ran in and locked the door. Anyway, sorry. I probably shouldn't be telling all these stories. But it dawned on me, I was like, maybe I'm being a jerk. It seemed totally reasonable. Why would I want them to watch TV with me? It dawned on me, I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe there is no good reason that they can't watch this with me. So again, it's easy to see in other people. It takes a lot of maturity to step back and say, am I doing this also? You see this also when somebody plays the God card. And someone says, God told me this, and therefore I'm not going to listen to anybody else. And it's like, okay, but now I can't speak into your life because you said God said this. What if God said what, but he didn't say how or when or anything like that? But if you just have tunnel vision and say, don't talk to me, God said so. Okay, but did you add anything to what God said? Are you misinterpreting part of what God said? That, like I mentioned before with King David, God said, I'm going to be king. Okay, but did he say today? What did he say to do today though? Can we speak into your life? Like Joseph. He became very wise, but when he first had that dream that his brothers and sisters and parents would bow down to him, he went and told all of them. That wasn't wisdom. God didn't say, go tell everybody right now, and that's how it will happen. Hey, God said, bow down to me, bow down. That wasn't wisdom. And so, again, when you play the God card, you can close doors. You see this a lot when someone says, this is one you hear a lot. I think probably all of us have felt this way. You've never loved somebody the way I love them. So you wouldn't understand, or you've never been heartbroken like I've been heartbroken, so you would never understand. And you see people reject other people. You see, part of maturity is realizing some people actually can understand. Maybe not everybody, maybe not perfectly, but it takes maturity and wisdom to say, I do want to listen to you because maybe you can understand. Maybe you do have wisdom. Maybe you do have advice. Because see, our emotions want to shut things off and say, I'm the only one who understands. No one can help me. You can help other people, but I'm an exception. See, that's immaturity to disqualify yourself from the help of other people. So, the next thing that can happen as we zoom back and have self-awareness is that we can avoid becoming judgmental. I got to pick up the pace. I have 20 pages of notes here. Okay, so what happens when we grow is sometimes we can become very judgmental. It can even happen here where someone's like, now that I understand grace, everyone who doesn't teach grace is of the devil. right? Or God showed me how important prison ministry is. My pastor won't start prison ministry. He must not love Jesus, right? Or, if you don't love spending hours in worship like I do, you must not really love God like I do. Or if you aren't witnessing every single moment, every single day, you must not really care about the Great Commission. And, you start to see things through the filter of your own passion, your own calling, and see what immaturity does is say, now judge everybody who doesn't line up with what you are called to do, with what's in your heart right now. And see, again, when you have that self-awareness, you start to see, oh, wait, this is my calling. You need to see that distinction of what's for everybody and what's for me. Some things are for everybody, but some things are for you, and there's something that you're going through. When I was in the Air Force years ago, I read this book that blew me away. It was a Christian book, and I was like, this is amazing. This is pretty much canon. This should be in the Bible. This is the most powerful thing ever. So I took it home on vacation, and I showed it to my parents. And they started to read it, and they're kind of like, not really interested. And I was like, I thought you all loved Jesus. I was like, I can't believe my parents backslid. I was so proud of you all. You're missionaries, you're Bible teachers. How could you turn your back on God and not love this book? And so I was so heartbroken about that. And I tried to read the book again a year later, and I was like, this book is garbage. This is awful. And so it dawned on me, I was like, oh my goodness, I judged them when the reason they didn't like it is because they were actually farther along than me. And see, at the moment I thought, if you don't like this, you're not as far as I am. It didn't dawn on me, oh, you're actually farther along than me. That's why this didn't hit you the way it hit me. Because now that I read it with different, more mature eyes, I realize that it's not that great. So again, people have different callings, and people are in different stages. And if we say, I'm at this stage in my life where this is most important, so everyone else should be at that same stage of life, we're being very self-centered. We're not seeing them from a zoomed back perspective. If we don't realize this, we'll always be frustrated with other people who aren't doing what we think we should be doing. So if we understand our own context, it's easier to be gracious to other people. So now I want to zoom back even more and talk about favor. One of the things that happen as we start to value other people and we start to zoom back is we start to value favor also. Luke 2:52 says, Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. So why would Jesus care about favor with men? I used to read this and be like, who cares what people thought of him, right? Why would Jesus care about favor with men? It's only God's opinion matters, right? Proverbs 27 verse 10. Do not forsake your own friend or your father's friend, nor go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor nearby than a brother far away. Here's saying value relationships, not just your own, but even your parents. Don't disregard other relationships that God has put in your life. Because, again, in this specific example, he's saying, if you need help, it's better to have somebody close by than someone that you're closer with who's very far away. Psalm 5, verse 12, for you, O Lord, will bless the righteous. With favor, you will surround him as with a shield. So favor is very important. It's the way that God, think about that. With favor, he's surrounding you with favor as with a shield. Favor can protect us. Favor can do all kinds of things. It's not just about people liking you. Not caring about others is a fruit of immaturity. Not caring about favor is a fruit of immaturity. As we see the bigger picture, we'll care about others. If we can only see from our own point of view, we won't value anyone else's. And that's because people affect us. We don't live on an island. It's not just you and God, and who cares about anybody else. We were called to be in this generation at the same time. When God had me born in 1981, he knew that I would be whatever age I am right now this year, right? God knew that I would be this age and you would be your age, and he knew that we would be in the same room right now, right? He knew that we would all be mingling. Like, he created us to be in the same time and space right here, right now. It wasn't an accident. It's not kind of like, oh, I'll just throw them in wherever. It's like, no, I want these people here for this generation, right? I want this person to be, think about it. If you go through your whole life, it's like, God knows what he has for you when you're 80, when you're 50, when you're 30, when you're 20. When he had you born, he's like, I want all the timeline perfect, and so I'm going to have you born right here so that you're at the perfect place in your life right here. And over here, you're also at the perfect place in your life. And when you're right here, you're also at the perfect place in your life, because I want you to be 50 when this happens in the world. I want you to be 53 when this happens in the world. All those things. So God's planned ahead like that. As far as valuing other people's opinions, like I mentioned before, Proverbs 11:14, in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. Proverbs 9, verse 8, do not correct a scoffer lest he hate you. Rebuke a wise man and he will love you. I've used these before, but again, rebuke a wise man. So now read this from the perspective of the one being rebuked. If you care about others, when you're rebuked, you're saying, wow, thank you for correcting me because I want to grow. Right? We genuinely care about feedback because we care about their opinion. You saw something in my life I didn't see, so I value that. I appreciate that you care about me enough to want me to grow. So, wisdom values favor and wisdom attracts favor. Next is favor is investing. Favor is a fruit of trust. This will produce, so somebody gives you favor, somebody invests in you. So for example, somebody's like, I just randomly want to bless you with money. Or, I just want to randomly, buy your business or invest in your company, or I want to sow $1 million into your church, or any kind of favor. There's millions of examples. What they're saying is, I trust you. I trust that this is an investment, that if I pay for your food at the restaurant, I trust that this will bless you and I care about you. I'm trusting that this is going to good use, right? Or I trust your potential. Or, someone gave me a break when I was going through a hard time. I trust that this will give you a break and help you because I know that I got through it and I trust that this might help you get through it, right? So do they trust our motives? Do they trust our ability? Do they trust our potential? I heard a quote along the lines of, receiving favor reflects the giver. It doesn't reveal anything about the receiver. It just reveals the heart of the giver. Maintaining favor reveals the heart of the receiver. See, anybody can receive favor once. Maintaining that favor shows the character of the person who received it. Okay, so next, trust is like currency. The more you have, the more you can do. Think about everything in society and how much it involves trust. If you don't trust a surgeon, you won't let them cut you open, and they won't be able to help you, right? Assuming you need surgery. If you don't trust a restaurant, you won't get to enjoy their food because you don't trust them. See, when you don't have trust, you're cutting yourself off from other people. You say, I need a back rub, but I don't trust anybody else. So you're trying to give yourself a back rub, right? If you don't trust anybody else, you're limiting yourself. They can't bless you because you don't trust them. Same thing, if they don't have your trust, if nobody trusts you, you're cut off from them. They won't receive from what you have to offer. You might be the most amazing minister, the wisest person in the world. If nobody trusts you, you have nothing to do with it. What's your wisdom going to accomplish? Because see, part of wisdom is valuing the trust of others because that enables you to bless them, right? And it doesn't only bless them, it blesses the whole world, it blesses you also. By earning people's trust, we can receive from them and they can receive from us. So next point is that demonstrated wisdom earns trust. Daniel and the chief of the eunuchs. Let's see. I'll go ahead and read this. So Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. This is Daniel 1, verses 8 through 16. Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into the favor and goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs. Okay, so we see favor and goodwill with the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king. So Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days, and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance be examined before you, and the appearance of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies. And as you see fit, so deal with your servants. So he consented with them in this matter and tested them. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead, or I'm going to skip the rest. So a few things that happened here. See, Daniel showed great wisdom and tact in this situation. He didn't pick a fight, right? He could have said, I refuse to do this, and I don't care what happens to me or to you or anything. I refuse. And we could read that and be like, wow, what a man of God, right? But Daniel used wisdom. He didn't pick a fight. He honored the chief of the eunuchs, and he looked for a win-win situation. Daniel didn't demand that the other person put himself on the line. He said, I'll put myself on the line. So I'll break this down a bit more in depth, what I just shared. So first of all, Daniel requested. It said he requested this of the chief of the eunuchs. He didn't demand this. He requested it. Daniel was humble. He didn't demand. He didn't pick a fight. The next thing that Daniel did in this is he listened. See, again, he isn't just looking through his perspective. He's saying, what's important to you? So what's important to the chief of the eunuchs? Well, to that guy, he said, your appearance is important to me, and my head is important to me. I don't want to die. I need you to look your best. And so he's saying, I'm scared. See, Daniel didn't just say, this is what's important to me. He said, what's important to you? Because if I want to use wisdom, I need to see this from your perspective also. I want this to be a win-win. This is what's important to me, but what's important to you also. So that's what Daniel did. He found a win-win. He said, I don't want to defile myself. You don't want to get killed. Okay, let's find a situation where we both get what we want, right? So he said, you test us. So again, this is also showing how Daniel trusted God, because he's saying in the natural, it's impossible. If I don't eat good food, I won't look as good as the other people. But he's saying, okay, I'll put myself on the line. You test us, and if God doesn't come through for me, then I'll do what you're saying. But I know God's going to come through for me. So he's saying, you test us, and we'll look even better. And so Daniel didn't only act respectful toward the chief of the eunuchs, he probably got him a promotion. Right? He said, I'm going to make you look good. I'm not going to make you look bad so that I can look good. He's saying, we're going to look healthier than everybody else. We're going to, the king's going to ask you, what did you do with these people? They're amazing. They're 10 times wiser than everybody else. They look 10 times better than everybody else. Right? So Daniel's saying, I'm going to honor God, but I trust that by honoring God, that he's going to honor me and he's going to honor you. And so we're going to win in this situation. So again, Daniel made him look good. Think of somebody else who might have been in that same situation. They might have said, I demand to not eat this food. I refuse. I'm going to go on a hunger strike. And then when the chief of the eunuchs says, but I'm scared, and say, I don't care. That's your problem. I don't care what happens to you. I'm going to honor my God. And then what would happen next? The chief of the eunuchs probably would get killed or get fired, or they would get killed or get kicked out. They'd starve. Again, think about this. Daniel and his friends could have easily just been other scholars in the country. No one would have ever known about them. But it was his amazing wisdom that opened up doors of influence that allowed him to make an impact for the whole world, really, even for us. He's still making an impact in the world today. It's because of his wisdom, because he saw the bigger picture. Maturity is realizing I'm amazing and special, but so is everybody else. And so I care about them as much as I care about myself. Wisdom and maturity aren't about disconnecting. So side note real quick is that wisdom also gives favor. See, we don't need to only see ourselves as the people who want to receive favor. We're the head and not the tail. We shouldn't live life always looking to be blessed. We should be looking at life and saying, how can I bless people? Because I'm the one who has what they all need. I'm the one who's in a position to bless them. I have something amazing inside of me. I want to bless other people. So again, we attract favor, but we also want to have that heart where we're looking for ways to give favor to other people. So next, favor creates access. If you're wise, you have a lot to offer, but if no one trusts you, they won't receive your wisdom. If others resist your wisdom, you also miss out. Wisdom and maturity attract promotion. Because Daniel had that heart and that wisdom, God elevated him to be second in command in multiple kingdoms. So next, wisdom and maturity aren't techniques for self-promotion. This isn't about being self-centered, and here's a better way to be self-centered. This is about changing how we look at life. If you're wise and mature, you'll value others. If you value others, you'll want to bless them. If you want to bless them, your wisdom will help you do that. The more effective you are at it, the more people will trust you. The more they trust you, the more influence you're going to have. The more influence you have, the more wisdom you need. Right? So it just goes in this circle where the more you walk in wisdom, the more you want and value wisdom because it's blessing other people. And the more you do this, the more people start to realize that you're doing it and they want more of you in their life. Like I said, wisdom and maturity attract promotion, and they want more wisdom and maturity. I'll skip over reading this, but if you look at Solomon in 1 Kings, when God came to him and said, I'll give you whatever you want, ask for whatever you want. And Solomon said, I'm but a child, and I'm over this entire country. I ask for wisdom to rule them well. I ask for understanding. See, Solomon acknowledged, I'm a youth. See, he was king. He could say, I'm king. Give me power. I want more power, and I want people to obey me. But he acknowledged, he was self-aware enough to say, I'm a child, and so I don't have all the answers. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Okay, so let's zoom back even more now. Favor with God. Wisdom values favor with man, but values favor with God even more. But what does that even mean? I already mentioned this verse, but Jesus grew in favor with God and man. What does that mean to grow in favor with God? I mean, doesn't that sound weird to anybody? Jesus grew in favor with God? How can Jesus grow in favor with God? He is God. It sounded kind of weird to me. And so how is that even possible? Well, the thing is, immaturity isn't wrong, it's only incomplete. Parents don't give their kids something that they're not ready for. Galatians 4:1. Now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, does not differ at all from a slave, though he is master of all. See, even Jesus, when it wasn't his time yet, was like a slave to God. He wasn't walking around as master of all. It wasn't his time, right? So it wasn't that he didn't have the right heart, that he wasn't God, that he wasn't perfect. It's that he wasn't fully mature as far as his calling was concerned. It wasn't the right time yet. See, it's not just about our hearts. It's about our ability, our timing, our wisdom, our preparation. See, favor is a fruit of trust, like I mentioned. Trust in our heart and our ability. So you might have the perfect heart, but if your ability isn't there, if you're kind of like, I want to do the right thing, but I'm still in bondage over here, okay, maybe you're not ready for this level of responsibility. It's not that your heart's not perfect. It's not that your spirit's not just like Christ's, but it's not the right time yet. In 1 Timothy, Paul says not to promote a novice. Right? It's not that God doesn't love them. It's never about God's love for you. It's never about God's promises toward you. It's about your calling. So you might not be ready for certain levels of your calling. God is never the limiting factor in how much he uses us. It's all about where we are in our walk with him. My daughter can cry and cry and cry all day asking for a knife. I'm not going to give her a knife. I care about her. And sometimes we do the same thing to God. We're like, God, just give me more power, give me more responsibility, give me more authority. God's saying, no, I'm not going to give you that because you'll hurt yourself and you'll hurt other people. You're not ready for it. It's not that I love my daughter. I'm not saying I'm not going to give this to you because I don't love you enough yet. I'm saying, no, I love you and you're not ready for this. That's why I'm withholding this. And again, I'm not talking about God's promises. All his promises are yes and amen. It's not I'm withholding healing from you because you're not ready yet. God's not going to say I'm withholding my love for you. I'm not, he's not withholding any good thing from us. I'm talking about our calling right here, right? And so I believe that favor with God is the same thing as maturity, which again, maturity is not a bad thing. It just means that you're not complete in that area. And it might even just be preparation. And so now I want to zoom back even more. Again, zooming back, the whole point of zooming back is to cut through all the confusion and see things as simple as possible. We want to see the big picture, cut through all the complexity, and just get to the very simple core. And the simplest core of all is the fear of the Lord. That's why this lesson is called Fear and Favor. A lot of people get uncomfortable with the topic of the fear of the Lord. Sometimes we just dismiss it. It's one of those things where it's kind of like, it's Old Testament, move on. Or, God loves us, and so that's replaced the fear of the Lord. Now we have the love of the Lord. So forget, the 10,000 verses in the Bible about the fear of the Lord, just ignore all that. Don't worry about a thing. Just let's throw it aside. But see, this is a huge theme in the Bible. And I've mentioned before, I want to know God in every single way possible. I don't want to shy away from something that looks scary because I know I'm going to like what I find if it's the truth. I know God's heart well enough to know if I dig deep into anything that's true, I'm not going to discover like, oh my goodness, God's not good. Like I know God's good, so I'm not scared of what I'll find. So I'm not scared of what I'll find if I dig into what is the fear of the Lord. This is a very huge theme. The first time I ever shared at a Bible study years ago, I taught on the fear of the Lord, and what I did was I printed out like 74 verses on the fear of the Lord, and I just read them all. That's before I realized effective study isn't the same as effective teaching. So everyone probably was bored, but I was super excited about it. It was really interesting. So, Proverbs 9, verse 10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So it'd be hard to talk about wisdom without talking about the fear of the Lord. So how does it fit in? So we got a few other verses. 1 Samuel 12:14, if you fear the Lord and serve him and obey his voice and do not rebel against the commandment of the Lord, then both you and the king who reigns over you will continue following the Lord your God. So again, you see cause and effect. If you fear the Lord, you'll continue following God. So the fear of the Lord apparently is a good thing because following God is a good thing. Job 28:28, and to man he said, behold, the fear of the Lord is wisdom, and to depart from evil, that is understanding. See, if you truly understand, you'll depart from evil because you realize that leads to effects that I don't want. The fear of the Lord is wisdom. Proverbs 8:13, the fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogance in the evil way, and the perverse mouth I hate. So if you fear the Lord, you hate evil. And again, evil isn't the things I want to do that God doesn't like. It's things that are bad for me. It's sin and death. I want to hate death. The fear of the Lord is to hate things that hurt me, right? 2 Corinthians 5:11. This is New Testament, New Covenant. Knowing, therefore, the terror of the Lord, we persuade men. But we are well known to God, and I also trust are well known in your consciences. Knowing, therefore, the terror of the Lord. And I looked it up, and it means terror. But see, this doesn't mean being afraid of God. Exodus 20:20 is a great verse to help explain the fear of the Lord. Moses said to the people, "Do not fear, for God has come to test you, and that his fear may be before you, so that you may not sin." Do not fear. God came so you can be afraid. Wait, what? It's two different things. It would help if there's two different words for it, but it's two different concepts. He's saying, don't be afraid. God has come that you may fear him, so you may not sin. So again, the goal in this is so you may not sin, so you may not walk in death. It's two different things. Do not be afraid of God, but fear him. Okay, what's that mean? God's never wanted us to be afraid of him. Even in the Old Covenant, he didn't want us to be afraid of him. So when we say fear the Lord, that's for the Old Testament. Even in the Old Testament, God did not want people to fear him. He loved it when people weren't afraid of him. When David, in Psalm 23:6, said, "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." David's inviting himself into God's house. He's like, have you ever had a friend do that? Like, hey, how about I just come move in and stay? And he's saying, I love God so much, I want to live with him. There's no verse where God says, come dwell in my house. That was David's desire. He's like, I feel so close with you. I'm not afraid to make this amazing request. I want to live with you forever. God loved that. See, God was never saying, I want you to be afraid of me and keep your distance from me. He loved when people understood and approached him and wanted intimacy with him. That was always God's desire. God never changes, only situations change. The covenants change. God's heart never changes. And so some people say fear of the Lord is reverential fear. And I don't really like that definition. I understand where it's coming from because it would help if we have two different words, right? There's fear and then there's reverential fear. But see, the thing is, you can revere anything. You can revere a dog. Look at this dog. Oh, that dog is the president's dog. I have to revere that dog, right? If Andrew had a dog running around, everyone would be like, oh, there's Andrew's dog. Let it do whatever it wants, right? You can revere anything. Reverence is a gift that you give. But see, God never asks us to produce something for him. The whole grace message is what God gives to us is we react to that, right? So we're bouncing back something that he's given to us. And so reverence, you can reverence a king that's 3 years old, right? If they have a title, they aren't greater than I am, but their title is, so I'm going to revere them because of their title, right? Reverence is something that you can give to anybody, anything. That's not what the fear of the Lord is. The fear of the Lord is a reaction. We're not just saying, I choose to revere you, Father. This is a decision I'm making. I choose to revere you. Look at John in Revelation 1:17. So John turned around and saw Jesus in all his glory. He said, when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. But he laid his right hand on me, saying to me, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. So you see two things right here. I fell down as dead. That wasn't reverence. That was freaking out. That's a reaction. That's not a choice or a decision or, I'm supposed to lay down. It's, oh my goodness, I had no idea this is who you really were. It's just shock and awe, just being totally amazed at what he saw. And then right after you see Jesus say, don't be afraid. So it's the two things. See, fear of the Lord is being aware of who he really is. But it's not being afraid of him, though. See, God doesn't want us to be afraid of him, but he wants us to be aware of who he really is. See, that's the fear of the Lord. It's awe and appreciation of who he really is without holding back. John was awestruck. You know how sometimes you hear testimonies of people who say, I had this encounter with God and it was so overwhelming. I thought I was going to die, so I had to say, God, please, please, please stop. You'll kill me. Whenever I hear those, I'm kind of like, I don't get it. I would totally be up for God vaporizing me. I would not, if I'm on a roller coaster and it's like, tuk, 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 you get to the top, and have you ever heard somebody be like, stop the ride, I went off? How annoying would that be where God's kind of like, I'm about to take you on a roller coaster, and you're like, stop, take me off this ride. I'd be like, no. Do you really think, I know there's a very catchy song that says God's love is reckless, but God's not reckless. He's not going to accidentally kill me and be like, oops. I was trying to have intimacy with Daniel, and poof, he just died. Oh my, I did it again. If he did kill me, I know he'd bring me back, right? Or if it's my time and he's kind of like, you know what, forget dying. How about just come be with me? You're done. You ran the race so well, just keep running. And just kind of, where's Daniel going? Daniel's flying away. I'd be like, I hope I haven't experienced where I beg God to stop because I think it'll kill me. Although until that happens, I'm convinced I wouldn't do it. I'd be kind of like, kill me. This will be sweet. Show me whatever on earth you want to show me. I'm not going to tell you to hold back. And I say that now. If I ever change my mind, I'll recant. I'll come back and be like, okay, well, now I know. But even then, I'll be like, okay, God, give me another chance. I know I got scared that time. It's like when you dip your foot in the pool and you're like, okay, that's freezing. I'm not doing it. Then you think about it and you're like, never mind, I'm just going to jump in, right? So that's how I hope I would approach it. Again, it's a reaction to God to fear the Lord. It's not something you choose to do. It's a reaction because you're seeing him for real. Your eyes are opened to who he is, how amazing he is, how powerful he is. And that's something that we need to build everything else on. See, if we get this part wrong, everything else in our lives will be wrong, because we might say, I know everything about God except who he really is. And so now everything else is on shaky ground. When I was in high school, once I came home early, this was in Chile, and I came in through the back gate instead of the front door because it was a shorter walk. And my dad wasn't expecting me. And so I just am walking home. I'm walking in through the kitchen door, and as I open the door, I see my dad, and he's about to falcon punch me. He's like, whoa. And I was like, whoa, I did not know you had that in you. And it just dawned on me, it's like, my dad is stronger than me. My dad was about to falcon punch me. And I was like, I have a newfound respect for you. Right? And another time when I was in the Marines, I had this one drill instructor. All the drill instructors were terrifying, but one of them in particular, he would wear super small shirts because he was ripped. When he moved, you're like, that shirt's good. He must buy new shirts every week because his muscles are just pouring through this thing. The buttons are just snapping every time he breathes. And so I already was terrified of this guy. But once I'm walking through a hallway, and he got an emergency call at the other side of the building, and I'm walking through this hallway, and all of a sudden I see this man running at me, just Incredible Hulk, just running at me full speed, charging straight at me. I have nowhere to go. And I just see this person charging right at me. And I won't say what he said, but he yelled at me to get out of the way. And so I got out of the way. But in that moment, I was like, thank God he's on my side, right? I would hate to be our enemy. Oh my goodness. I've never been on the other end of this and fully appreciated how strong we are, and so seeing that awareness of, wow, I did not realize. And again, phrase, thank God he's on my side. When you truly see God for who he is, you'll be like, I am so glad you're on my side. And see, that's what God wants for us. God doesn't want us to look at him and be kind of like, oh, there's a sickness. Oh, I hope God can handle it. I hope God can do something about it. It's like, no, if you feel that way, you aren't seeing God for who he really is. So you want to fully appreciate his love for you if you don't fully see who he is. There's an example that I love. I may have shared it in the past. If you're in a zoo, a petting zoo, and you walk up to a little lamb and you start petting it and it licks your hand, you're like, how cute. This is so neat and kind of nasty, this nasty sheep. and you're like, okay, it's licking me. How fun. All of a sudden someone screams, the lion just escaped. And you look over and you see a lion charging at you full speed, roaring as loud as it can. And right before it jumps on you, it stops and it licks your face. Which one's more memorable? Which one made a greater impact? See, if we need to know Jesus as the lamb, but if we don't know him as the lion, we won't fully appreciate how much he loves us. We won't fully appreciate the fact that he forgave us. We won't fully appreciate the fact that he heals us. When you read his word, you won't just say, oh, God says that, but look at what the devil says. You'd be like, God says that. I don't even care what the devil says, right? It totally changes everything when we see God for who he really is. When David went to fight Goliath, the whole army was scared of Goliath until David killed him. And then because David, he didn't say it's about how strong I am. He said, I have a covenant with God. You're uncircumcised. You have no covenant with God. So after David kills him, everyone in the army, what did they do? They started chasing the other army. They went from fear to courage like that because suddenly they're reminded, wait a minute, I have a covenant with God too. They should be scared of us. We shouldn't be scared of them, right? So that full awareness of who God is and his full power is the fear of the Lord, and it empowers every single other thing that God's trying to show us, because we realize God's the one who said this. Not just any God, that God. The God that I see. Again, my spiritual eyes are open. And so that's why it's like, I want to see God more and more and more. I want more experiences where I'm like, I am terrified of how awesome you are, but I'm not scared of you. I'm scared for my enemies, right? Romans 8:31. What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? If you truly see God for who he is, you're going to mean that. You can say that all day long, but you can only mean it as much as you know who he is. The more you see, no, that's my God. So then you say, like, who could possibly be against me? God called me to do this. It's impossible. You haven't seen my God. I've seen my God. I'm not scared. If you've seen my God, you wouldn't be intimidated by this. Oh, but everybody's tried. They've failed. I don't care. My God and I won't fail. He told me to do this. I can do this. I mean, when I was in the Marines, anyway, long story. I'll go into it some other time. But when I was in the Marines, those drill instructors, because I feared them, they were on my side. They cared about me. You respect them so much. You're like, when you graduate, when they salute you, or they don't salute you, whatever. But when you graduate, you're like, I've never respected somebody this much, right? But in the moment, you're like, I'm terrified of you. If they had told me to do anything, I would have done it. If they had said, go sing the Star Spangled Banner in front of 1 million people, and I'm like, I don't sing, I wouldn't have thought that. I would have been like, yes, sir, or aye, sir, right? You go and do it. If he says, go and do this, go and do that, you'd be like, absolutely, because you're the one telling me to do it. If anybody questions me, I'll say, talk to him. I'm not disobeying him. If you want to tell him he's wrong, you can tell him he's wrong. I'm going to do what he told me to do, right? Same thing in the world where when you say, talk to God if you have a problem, right? I'm answering to him. I'm his servant. He told me not to be afraid. I'm not going to be afraid. He told me I can do this. I can do this, right? And so if we know who he really is, we'll value his opinion more than our own. We'll never say no to him. So many times in our heart, God says, let go of this, trust me. And we say, no. If you truly look him in the eyes, you couldn't say that. You'd be like, you must know something I don't know, right? If we aren't fully in awe of who God is, we won't appreciate his love for us, his power for us, his forgiveness, his promises, his kindness, the price that he paid. When you realize that's the God who died for me, that's amazing. If we think God's a little teddy bear and he died for us, it's like, oh, poor Jesus. You realize, no, that's the God who died for me. He's huge. He's amazing. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. It takes on a whole new meaning. So the fear of the Lord protects us. Proverbs 3:7, do not be wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord and depart from evil. If we know who he is, it'll protect us from other things, because we'll say, I don't care what you say. I'm not going to fall into that. I don't care what I feel. I care what God says. If you say, I'm sad, I'm confused, I'm upset, inside of you, it's like, no, but I care what God says more, because I see him for who he really is. Several years ago, something horrible happened that really devastated me. The most devastating thing that happened in my life up to that point. And I remember telling God, because I was just numb. I don't know if any of you have ever been in that situation where you're like, and I said, God, I'm broken. I don't know if I can tell this story, sorry. Anyway, I'll cut to the ending. I just said, God, I'm broken. I'm not happy. I never want to be happy again. I'm not whole. I never want to be whole again. I said, I don't want to get over this. And I said, I'm broken. I'm never gonna enjoy life again. I'm done. And I just hear him whisper to me, no, you're not. And it took humility to receive that. He told me very gently, but sorry, I didn't think I'd get emotional. But anyway, see, because I said, you're bigger than me, you're smarter than me, you're more kind than me, you're more loving than me. You know things I don't know, you see things I don't see. So if you say I'm not broken, I'm not, right? Even though everything inside me says I'm broken forever, you say I'm not, therefore I'm not. And I still feel like this, and I'm going to walk through this with you, but I already see the ending because I believe you, because you're bigger than me. And again, sometimes we try to get fancy, but in the end, when push comes to shove, again, this is the core. Everything else that we know is built on this, right? Sorry. In the end, just keep it very simple. No matter what I think, no matter what the world shows me, God's bigger than me. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be the most eloquent thing or the most fancy, cool adjective you come up with. You're bigger than me. You're better. You're stronger. You're smarter. You're kinder. You're more loving than me, right? That's the ultimate big picture. When all else fails, God's bigger than me. So all true wisdom must be built on this. Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Philippians 4:7, And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. See, when we say, I don't understand everything, but I do understand who you are, everything else can be built on that. We can have peace that passes understanding. Because again, understanding is powerful and it's great, but it's not perfect in our natural minds. So when we say, God, I trust you, we can walk in things beyond what we can understand. And so that's the big picture, is being fully aware of who he is. Thanks.